Maya, thank you for joining me on Headstrong.
Thank you, I'm very excited.
How are you doing? Because I don't think people actually ask, how are you that often, other than they go, yeah, I'm all right, and they crack on. So how are you doing?
Yeah, well, on that, you actually have to ask someone 7 times how they are before they actually tell you. So you got 7 questions already. No,
I'm okay.
yeah, that's it. No, I'm good. There's always that balance of at the moment there's a lot going on. So it's very thrilling, overwhelming with the book. However, I'm very grateful. So it's just this balance of, being present with it and enjoying the process, but also recognizing this is very unfamiliar for me. But yeah.
I want to talk first of all about the differentiation and your terminology of mental fitness rather than mental health, because I want to know how you define that and why indeed you've kind of defined it in that way.
Yeah, so, some people might look at, I say, instead of saying mental health, I say mental fitness, but that is because there is a very small but significant difference. So the way I think about it is if you've got a mind, you've got mental health. It's a bit like, we all have bodies, so we have a level of physical health. It will be good, bad, it's pretty static. Mental fitness, on the other hand, is the active maintenance of a good mental health. So just like with physical fitness, you're only physically fit if you're going to the gym, maybe you are doing Pilates, dance, etc. But most people are doing nothing for their brains. So how are we meant to stay mentally fit if we haven't even learned the exercises or know what to do? And the thing I've really learned is that when we say mental fitness, it kind of sounds more empowering,
For sure.
sexy. You're like, actually, I want to take action. But it's funny because like a few months ago, I went around London just being like, oh, can you rate your mental fitness out of 10? And people were like, well, what is that? And this is the problem, right? There's such a lack of education when it comes to training the mind because we've all grown up training the body. So a very small difference, but very, very important. And the term was actually, it's been in some studies and journals, but in the 1950s. Since then, no one has really spoken about it or got into depth in it. And that's, I think, a massive problem.
What do you think the biggest misconception people have is about becoming mentally strong? And I don't want to use that in a way that should be the end goal, because I think there's such strength in vulnerability. But what do you think their a misconception is if we're looking at it from a surface level?
So when it comes to building a strong mind, you don't need to be unhappy or unwell to do that. And if we take the distinction even further, you've got mental health, right? Where the state of your mind. You've got mental illness, which is when the state of your mind is so bad that maybe you'll seek professional help. Then you've got the mental fitness, which is the active maintenance, the exercises you're doing. Then you've got mental weakness. Now, mental weakness, everyone goes through. It's just like if you're a bit tired in your body, you're physically weaker, right? So your mental performance isn't going to be as good. And that's where mental fitness can be so powerful, because if I look at the most mentally fit people in the world, probably is, the athletes or the entrepreneurs, the really resilient characters who have gone through a lot. And it's not to say they've all had problems or they're unhappy. They do it because they're like, well, actually, how can I think a bit better? How can I manage my emotions a bit better? How can I build my confidence so that I can manage life a bit better? That to me is the epitome of mental fitness. So, and I will say, so someone asked me this the other day, the one reason I don't like my job is because even though I'm a mental fitness expert, people consider that I have the perfect mind. But that's just not true. I'm still on that journey. I'm going through the same stuff as everyone else. It's just that, yes, I probably have more tools to know how to come back to a mentally strong brain. But I still struggle with, things like rejection or relationships or whatever. But the point is, am I working on it? Am I trying to learn and be dynamic with it? That's the difference.
Do you think the sole driving force and factor of mental fitness comes from the individual? Are there any other external and contributing factors that encourage the training of mental fitness, or does it need to come from within?
It's a great question. I think sometimes external circumstances can obviously push you to explore these things. And I do believe actually a level of suffering maybe is needed to get there. What I've learned is that when you take ownership of something like your mind, that is game changing. Because I think, in the world we live in, there is so much content and knowledge is everywhere, so much information, but we're starving for that like personal wisdom to be like, well, how do I think? Or that awareness of what is my body telling me? And so whilst, yes, knowledge can be given everywhere, I really think you have to be the one that takes the knowledge. You have to be the one to be like, actually, how do I implement this? And that's something I really struggled with, right? I'd be on panels and everyone's talking about the importance of mental health. And I'm like, this is boring to me now. We don't sit there saying, yes, training your body is really important. We've got to move beyond and we've actually got to start doing something about it. That's where we see change.
I know that you will have been asked this many a time. However, I want to imagine we're getting into an elevator and I've never heard of visualization before. We've got 30 seconds to go up to the 29th floor. What is visualization?
Close your eyes. And I want you to imagine that maybe you're standing in a kitchen and you have half a lemon in your hand. And I just want you to feel it. It's got tough yellow skin. And just start smelling it now. So it's quite fragrant. You can smell that citrusy, smell of a lemon. And now just start squeezing this drop by drop into your mouth. I want you to taste that juice. It's so cold, it's tangy, it's so sour. Like your saliva is going a bit weird, your cheeks are tingling. Really empty that whole lemon into your mouth. It is so tangy, citrusy. Okay, now open your eyes for me. Right, did your mouth go a little bit weird?
Yeah,
right.
salivating.
Okay, so in those 30 seconds, what that did is showed you the science of visualization and how to do it. So in that scenario, you have mentally rehearsed basically taking a lemon and squeezing it into your mouth. Now, your brain really, really struggles to know the difference between what's real and imagined. So you're not actually holding a lemon, right? But your brain reacted like it was, and so did your body. Hence why your saliva went a bit weird or, your cheeks tingled. Now, lemons aren't going to help you in your mental fitness, but if we apply the same thinking to, let's say, public speaking, a lot of people have the fear of it, or they're like, oh my, what if this goes wrong, right? If you were to close your eyes and mentally rehearse a good performance, so you mentally rehearse, how am I going to walk on? What are my hands going to do? Where's my eye contact? What am I going to wear? What you're doing is you're telling your brain, I've been here before. I've done this. And if you do it maybe 5, 10 times, you get very good at that performance. And so then when you actually come to the real thing, you're in flow state. You have more confidence, you have more belief, but also you've trained that muscle so you can now trust it as you perform. So that's really the essence of what we're doing. We're using our imagination to engineer our thoughts for an outcome.
What's the biggest misunderstanding of someone who comes up to you and assumes something about visualization that they say to you, which couldn't be farther from the truth?
So the one I get a lot is that, so isn't visualization just manifestation? And I'm like, no. So the thing is, where I think I'm most excited about, writing the book and bringing that information out there is because it's genuinely bringing new concepts and techniques to the forefront. So manifestation, everyone thinks, okay, you have something in your mind and you can just make it happen. It's most similar to something like outcome visualization, where you've got a goal and you're mentally rehearsing it. So therefore, you have better belief, or maybe it looks like the opportunity comes in your life, but really it's because you've changed your brain. Where it really has that distinction is when we look at the other 4 techniques. So process, creative, negative, and explorative have nothing to do with achieving your goals. That's about your performance. It's about managing emotions. It's about overcoming obstacles. So the first thing is, if you actually look at the techniques, different. 2, I come back to, where did visualization even come from? And it really started in the sports world, but in like Greek mythology. And really they were using it to become more resilient and to enhance their performance. And so, we'd never say that Mo Salah or Michael Phelps just manifested scoring goals or getting, 26 golden medals. Would we ever say that? No. But they visualize their goals because they are priming their brain to be better and to be more resilient and to, stick to that laser-focused goal. And so how you frame a technique really matters how you then use it. And so a lot of people will use manifestation at the beginning of the year and then never do it again. They see a vision board, cool, that's all their work done. Visualization is something you invest in weekly, daily, and that's the difference.
Yeah, my next question was going to be, it's fundamental ultimately from what you're saying to train and build it into your life in terms of consistency when it comes to visualization. Is that correct?
Yeah, because so the brain is really interesting in that it thrives on repetition. Now, most people are visualizing already, but they visualize worst case scenarios. They visualize things going wrong, or like, let's say they've had an experience where they've got anxious on a train before. Next time they have to go on a train, they will be repeating that experience. So whatever you repeat in your mind, you are getting very good at. That's the same with thoughts. It's the same with emotions. It's the same with the images we create. And so all the brain needs is that disruption and enough of the repetition for it to then change the pathway. And so if you're already visualizing now, but you're doing the negative, you just need to swap it to the positive. And what I would say is that, like, half an hour or an hour of visualization a week is less effective than maybe 2 minutes a day. So really, you just need 2-3 minutes, but repetitively, that's going to make a bigger difference.
I mean, if you are new to visualization, it would be great to find a book that would help me introduce this. So let's talk about Visualize.
Yeah.
It is wonderful. First of all, I think it is amazingly in-depth and beautifully articulate, as you'd expect, but it is fantastic. And I'm really hope that you're happy with it, because what's the timeline been like on this? Because it's not, delivering a book's not an easy one.
No, and whilst yes, okay, the actual creation of the book is maybe like a year and a half or something, the information it's like 8 years worth of practice, research, mistakes, knowledge, failed results, and interviews. And so really, when it came to writing it, it's like I had so much of the information, it was just putting it together. And I found the process tough. It was tough because I like speaking. So writing, I'm quite chatty. But actually, I realized, well, Maya, write how you would also want to speak, because this is new knowledge and people want to understand it in that way. And I've never ever thought to be like, okay, yes, you're going to write a book in your life. But I saw this one quote where it was like, when you can't find the book you want to read, write it.
Love that.
And that hit me because when I was learning about visualization, I had to go through so many different avenues and different teachers. And I was even looking through, blogs of Einstein's journals. And I was like, there's just not one place where really they go into that depth. And yes, there are chapters here and there, but other than that,
It's never more than a chapter.
exactly. So this to me is like the Bible. When you want to learn and master the skill, this is what you would read. And I will still go back to it because it's the fundamentals, yet also the mastery of a very powerful technique.
And it's all there. That's the thing. And what I like about what you said there is you'll go back to it. It's not like you've forgotten it, but it's like you couldn't have written it more succinctly and clearly, in that biblical sense. But one thing that I want to talk about from the book, because there's a chapter called Feel It to Heal It.
Yeah.
And that really resonated with me because you talk about, as a child and even now, being very emotional and being, and I think that's a very good thing. One of the quotes you have is, emotion requires flexibility, which I really love. But I wanted to talk about that in a bit more depth and see if you could explain that a bit further.
Yeah, I used to really struggle with my emotions, managing them, understanding them. And I've grown up in an environment where it wasn't anyone's fault, but I was always, if I cried, it was like, stop crying. Like, there's always a solution. Or it was considered quite weak, or, just move on to the next thing. And because I was very emotional, it just meant I was suppressing so much of the human experience that for me did lead to disease. I had so much resentment and sadness or anger that I had nowhere to put it. And through learning more about emotions, and I wish I'd known this about emotions when I was younger, emotions are energy in motion. And there's been some great research by neuroscientists to to really help us show that emotions are the language of the body, not the mind. But most of us, we just try and think them away, right? So when I look at this idea of emotions require flexibility, is because we're always in different situations and around different people, and emotions never go away. They're temporary, they're like data. And so that's why we have to be flexible in terms of, okay, let's be curious. What am I feeling? Where do I feel it in my body? And sometimes sadness doesn't always show up the same, anger doesn't always show up the same. And the most important thing is the way you respond to an emotion may change. So, like, look, I'll be so honest. Sometimes I'll just walk into my car and I need to just scream because I have so much anger there, right? But we can't do that in public. So I do have to find different ways to make that happen. I've now become very comfortable being able to just like cry and actually be okay with it. But again, in different situations, you need a different toolkit. Now, the biggest thing for me has been creative visualization, because that allows me to sit with my emotions and accept them whilst also move through them. And that's really where the power lies. I'm not scared of them anymore. And I can genuinely sit in that sadness, no matter how uncomfortable it is. Um, but the reason this chapter was super important to write is because when I work with a lot of high performers, a lot of them have forgotten what it means to feel something.
So true. Everyone is so good nowadays at suppressing emotion.
Yeah, so humans do three main things, right? We suppress them. So that's like you have a beach ball and you're just pushing it down and down and down. So eventually it's going to blow, you're going to have a breakdown, you're going to lash out at your partner, etc. Then we escape them. Escaping is like you don't even want to look at the ball, you're going to swim so far away from it, I'm not even going to deal with it. And then we've got expression. Now, expression is good and there are different ways to do it. But again, if we come back to the thing of emotions are energy in motion, sometimes talking about it or going to the gym because you're angry isn't actually enough. Like that, yes, expresses a bit of the energy, but it's still stuck in your body. And knowing that has completely changed the way I think about feeling something. And look, if we're suppressing negative emotions, we're also suppressing the really nice ones like love, joy, gratitude, because the body doesn't actually distinguish between the two. It's just energy.
Can you tell me your thoughts on emotional maturity and what you think that means in contemporary society, and how it's actually potentially a manipulated definition?
Yeah. So I find this quite interesting with men, actually. I think men really define it as emotional maturity as kind of like being really stoic, like, okay, I might feel something, but I need to show that. And I think emotional maturity, you actually have to define for yourself. But some of the things that have come up is one, um, when you are feeling an emotion, it's not believing everything you think. Knowing that, okay, right now I'm in a lens of anxiety or sadness, so maybe the thoughts I'm having aren't true right now. It's that level of, can I step aside and look at my emotions as data, not directors? That's really the fundamental thing, is if you can see your emotions as data, they're signals to your body being like, hey, I'm not feeling this, or hey, this is great. Rather than being like, oh no, now my day's ruined, or oh my gosh, I'm so triggered, I can't get out of this. It's really the data point. And I think where I'd say emotional maturity is, I would change it slightly, is emotional fearlessness. We're so scared to feel uncomfortable emotions, whether it's anxiety, rage, shame. I found shame so difficult. I think the hardest I found was envy and jealousy, because it was just, I felt like such an awful human being when I felt that. And so being fearless to be like, yeah, okay, I'm feeling this and I'll sit with it and let it release is the truest form of emotional maturity.
How do you think we've got to this point where we are so judgmental when someone is emotional? When, ultimately, as you've talked about there, having that fearlessness to express yourself. If someone is over-expressive or showcases an emotion that seems, not in public,
Yeah.
well, how have we got to that place, and what can we actually do to change that from an entire societal perspective?
I mean, it's a massive problem, isn't it? I think partly, so I actually do know the answer to this, to be fair. I was gonna do I actually scientifically. So a lot of people think about the subconscious mind when we think about the brain. When it comes to your emotions, you actually want to look at the unconscious and the conscious. So the conscious mind is what we have been trained to do. You've got to show up mature, um, self-trusting, confident, very good, perfect, right? Especially in the corporate world. Look at that. You are literally trained to show up as that. The unconscious mind is so wild. It's irrational. It's like savage. It's kind of immoral, actually. But we all have it. And if you look at kids, they're very good at expressing that element of it, right? Like I was on the train the other day and I was sitting there and I had just received some news that did make me really angry. But I was in public, so I understood that maybe I need to just bank it and then come back to it. So I put my headphones in. And then the girl next to me, she's like 5. She was banging on the window, crying, shouting. But by the end of the train journey, who felt better? She did.
Yeah, for sure.
Because actually, when we're kids, we're allowed to do that. Now, I'm not saying that when we're adults, we should also be allowed to do that. But the point is, we still have that side of us in it. It's that kind of like inner child, right? And so it's about finding skillful ways to feel the emotion. Now, I'm really careful not to say control the emotion.
Mm-hmm.
It's like controlling energy. How do you do that, right? Skillful ways to feel and release it. Now, that can literally mean shouting. It can mean screaming in the car. Then I look at I think tennis players have the best thing because they get to just shout on court and then the emotion goes, they can carry on. So again, it's the environments we're in that we have been conditioned to be like, you have to show up in a certain way. So I think the key thing here is you've got to find ways to actually feel it. And sometimes I will just go to the loo and spend 2-3 minutes just doing like a creative visualization or like shaking my body, and then I'll come out again. And that has changed my complete day because I actually took the time to do it.
And you're so right, because so many people are so let emotion fester. They sit on it, they don't even suppress it, but it's just like something bad will happen at the start of the day that defines the day.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to define your day.
No. But I will say it's easier said than done, right? Like it's also a very comfortable state to be in.
Yeah.
Like you can just sit in the sadness. You can, it's kind of like we like the victim mode. But just knowing that at every single moment, you do have the power to just choose different. And one thing I will say, so this I find really interesting. A lot of my clients will be like, okay, Maya, I'm feeling X, Y, Z. I want to feel really good. I want to feel really confident. So when you're thinking about shifting state, think of it like driving a car. You've got reverse, neutral, and drive. Most people try to go from reverse, like maybe they're really sad, to suddenly drive. They want to be like super happy, energetic. I'm like, 1 second. Let's go step by step. Go to neutral first and then go to drive. You can't skip the step. Otherwise, it's so extreme for the body that it's kind of fake. And I see this a lot. Someone like, let's say, breaks up with someone. You've got that really deep sadness. Immediately, people are like, no, like, I'm absolutely fine. I'm doing the best I ever have. But really, we've missed that little stage of being like, let's feel it, get to a neutral state, whether that's gratitude, it might just be acceptance, and then we can go sustainably up. And that's really important, knowing how you're moving through those states.
I always think the funniest one is at the beginning of January when it comes to New Year's resolutions, because that really is what you've just described there. What do you think of all of that sort of thing?
Like goals and everything.
Yeah. Because ultimately, everyone sets unrealistic goals. I read something, someone who I talked about on here has an amazing book out, and he was like, everyone, when they think of a new gym routine, they'll be like, yeah, I'm going to go 5 times a week. Sure, that's the goal. And then he was just like, well, then set a second goal, which is the realistic one. Yes, I can definitely do 2, and I'm not going to be disappointed if I don't reach 5 because I've done that one. And it's like, what is the reality of goal setting?
Wow, you're asking all these wicked questions. I love it. I do have an answer. No, I think goals are so personal. And the way I really look at it is, so I follow Bob Bowman's technique that he used with Michael Phelps. So why I like it is because goals are practical, emotional, and they require discipline, yet also inspiration. Now, people forget about the inspiration. So yeah, okay, you want to go to the gym 5 times a week. Why? Like, why? Tell me why it's actually a goal for you. If it's because you want to lose weight, not good enough. If it's because you want to feel good in yourself and you want to, be the mother for your kids, that I like. That I'm like, when you are off that wagon and you fall off, that will bring you back up. So what I say is, first we want that slightly, like, the mission you can really be inspired by. Then we have the more longer term goals, which might be, like, I want to become healthier, or I want to build this business, etc. Then we have the shorter term goals, which is, okay, but daily, who do I need to be? And what actions do I need to take in order to get there? So I'm not against people doing, New Year's resolutions, but what I think is really important is prioritizing. You can only really have one or two long term goals. The other one's fine, but that requires discipline. And that's where, for me, visualization's played a massive role, because we get so distracted. And to have laser focus in this world, we can't leave it by chance. And so every morning I will visualize, what does my goal look like? Whether it's the 5-year one, whether it might be like 2 years, fine, but it inspires me. And then I will think more short term, okay, who do I need to be today in order to make one action to get there? That's really important. So I say, have a I think, dream big, have a big vision, but take small, in fact, tiny, bold actions. That is like the recipe, in my opinion.
What do you think the equilibrium is between strength and vulnerability when it comes to nurturing mental health?
This is a really important topic, because I think often we think a strong mind is a positive mind. And it's always like, no, but look on the bright side, or you've just lost your job. It's like, no. Like, there's always going to be something else there. And I get that. But I think we have to understand that mental health, mental fitness is about having a more positive relationship with your mind. So that doesn't mean denying the times you feel really bad or you're going through something difficult. But I think it's knowing that you still have the power to come out of it, or that there's hope, or actually, or can I lean on some of the tools I have? Now, I am someone who, I think vulnerability has been a massive journey for me, because I think sharing your story or being honest about what you really think or feel is tough. It is tough. And especially in my position, in my work, if I'm too vulnerable, people will lose faith in me. And I see that. But it doesn't mean I'm going to not pretend, or I'm going to pretend that everything's amazing. No, it's life. Life always throws things at you. So I think it's redefining what vulnerability and strength means. And I think vulnerability is having the courage to talk about things. And strength is also having the courage to know that I can take ownership of it and I have the power to deal with it. So it is about the balance, because, I'm not going to sit here and be like, everything's amazing. Yes, I'm overwhelmed or feeling nervous, etc. I think it's about not dwelling on that, right? Like, if I keep repeating that, then sure, that's not going to help me. So we can very quickly go into the victim mindset when we are too vulnerable. So I think it's about being honest to who you are, whilst again taking the power for yourself.
You work with a lot of these kind of, as you say, business leaders, leaders in their field in all shapes and forms. But I know full well that let's use the city as an example, or in that kind of industry. They very much want to turn up every day, Monday to Friday, probably on the weekends as well, and be at 110% mentally the whole time. Which,
Yeah.
in my opinion, I know I couldn't do. That seems feasibly impossible. Yes, we can train and do as much as we possibly can. But what do you say to these people where, in terms of acceptance of, you don't have to be at that peak level the whole time. You know what that looks like, but it doesn't have to be consistently at that peak level.
Well, I think this is what people get really wrong, right? Like you said, you cannot perform at 110% all the time. And so that's why I love the seasonal approach to performance and life in general. So when you have that peak performance zone of genius, that's like your match day. That's when you have a big presentation, or you've got a football game, or you've got, finals of a tennis game. That is where you want your peak performance, where it's effortless performance. Now, you can't sustain that, and you shouldn't, because it requires a level of energy and mental discipline, right? So where I see it is that, just like how an athlete will train for game day, they've got training and then they have rest days, same thing. The brain needs as much rest as it does to also the training, just like physical fitness. So what I would say is, think of your performance a bit like like winter, spring, and harvest. You know, your harvest is when you're really producing. You've got top productivity, 100% sharpness, and you know how to get to that zone. In like the spring season, you might be at like 50% productivity or 50% mental strength. That's okay. That's good. Build it sustainably. And then in your hibernation or winter, fully give your mind a rest. Like it has to rest in order to work well. And I think, you know, I was thinking the other day, what if you had to pay for your brain?
Mm.
What if you had to give a monthly subscription to use your brain? Don't you think we would deal with it quite differently? But we don't. We treat it, we just actually take it for granted. And your brain isn't like this. Yes, it's a supercomputer, but it's not AI where it's just, you know, no matter how much you give it. To be fair, even when you give AI too much, it's like, can you pause for a second, right? So if it can't do it, we also need to think that if I were to build the strongest, sharpest, and, you know, healthiest mind, I would take care of it in a different way. I would appreciate it goes through seasons and its ebbs and flows, but it's knowing and appreciating and honoring those different seasons. That's key.
With yourself then, given that you are an incredibly busy individual, you've got things in
Yeah.
ties, we're working hard, but you've also there, just going off what you were saying in terms of you can't be running at that energy the whole time.
Yeah.
So what are you like on yourself when you're having one of those lower days, or you're not quite got all the cogs turned on? How do you put pressure on yourself to kind of get back up there, or do you also have that level of acceptance? Because I know I'm very good at giving advice to friends on that base level, but living by it is very different. So what's that like for you?
I definitely used to like, you know, I think a lot of us feel guilty when we're not productive. And so I learned this from Robin Sharma, who said that if you look at nature, when nature produces and has its harvest, what does it do after? It does nothing. It has to recover. And so when I say I literally live my life through these seasons, I really do. So most of the time I will be hibernating. I love sitting by the lake on my own. And some days, yeah, I'm probably not doing as much work as I should be, but actually that's what my body and mind need at the time. There's this thing, you know how like diamonds are formed under pressure?
Yeah.
My kind of like response to that is, yes, but bread dough rises when it rests. And that's me. I need a lot of time on my own, a lot of just like inward time to then be able to be on stages or be on podcasts or, you know, be writing books. Like I love the level of change that I can create. I have like monk mode, beast mode. The other thing is in spring mode, which is when you're growing, it's all about being sustainable. You can't go from like, you know, one to the other very quickly. So I make sure I have a lot of pockets of these hibernations. And then in my springtime, that's where it's really tricky because I'll maybe be at 50%, 60%, and I know I can be doing more. And people around me are doing so much more. And that's, you know, you struggle with comparison. It's not easy.
What's your approach to comparison?
I think comparison really destroyed my confidence and my self-esteem. Because anywhere you look now, it's like, oh, but they're doing this. Even with the book, right? Like, I've literally written a book, and yet some reason I'm like, oh, but her book did better. Or this person got on this list. And you have to be like, 1 second. The thing that has really helped me, there's 3 things that I love when it comes to comparison. 1, everyone is on their own time zone. Like, my journey is not yours. I'm not late. I'm not behind. I'm on my own journey. And I've got to own that. I've got to remember that. 2, there's that amazing quote that's like, you know, both the sun and moon shine, but at just at different times. Doesn't mean one's better than the other. They just shine in their different ways. And then I think 3 is like, comparison is very normal. And I think we've got to be kind to ourselves to be like, well, it's okay that you feel that way. Firstly, like unfollow or remove that stuff that's triggering you, which a lot of us aren't very good at. And if anything, we just keep torturing ourselves. And I have this like Mario Kart analogy where I think, you know, we all think we're on this same race, right? Where I'm in my car, you're in your car, and we're driving along this thing. But actually, your finish line is not mine. there was one point when my finish line was what, like walking again, versus today, yeah, it's building a company. So I'm actually on Rainbow Road and you might be on like Volcano Island. Yeah, I might still see you, but ultimately I'm on my own race, and like I still get hit by bananas or lightning and, you know, stuff goes wrong, but I'm on my race. And that I need to remember. So comparison is tough and it will destroy your confidence, which is why we've got to build the little tools again to help us and ask us, well, why is it getting to me? Why are you comparing yourself to that person? If you want it, fine, let's find a way to make it happen. If you're just trying to talk to yourself, then we've got to be disciplined here.
When it comes to that comparison, then obviously the biggest topic of conversation is going to be anything to do with social media. How do you manage your relationship with social media? Not necessarily just from a comparison perspective, but from a time management perspective, commitment to spending time on it, because ultimately you use it as a tool for business, as many people do, but it can become very unhealthy very quickly. So what's that relationship like for you?
I think being, you know, having a lot of followers or a lot of attention on social media is like being rich in Monopoly. Because I think it's all kind of fake, right? And I think the only reason I'm okay with my relationship with social media is because instead of looking for the likes and comments and validation from there, I've spent a lot of time asking myself, but do I actually like myself? If I like myself and then go on social media, I don't care what happens. I really don't. I don't even look at the comments. But if I know that I'm doing social media when I'm not feeling good about myself or not worthy, it's going to absolutely ruin that mental strength you have. So practically, I don't have any notifications on my phone.
Oh.
None. I create and I post, but I do not see any of the reactions. I don't want to. Nothing's ever that urgent, right? So I don't get any of the pop-ups, nothing, even WhatsApp. In fact, last week I deleted email. Probably not the best thing, but like, you know, I love my offline life. I want to be present in it. And then the second thing is, as soon as my offline life becomes worse than my online, I take a step back. I'm not going to post because clearly I need to go a bit inward and work on myself. But time management wise, you know, for me, it's like stick to creating, don't just consume. But even then, if I don't feel like posting, I'm not gonna. Why? It's just not, it's not where I feel the best. So I'm gonna always prioritize my offline over that.
In a world of overstimulation, at what point do you kind of self-acknowledge a need for self-reflection? You know, because everyone must have different triggers of what that looks like. But with everything going around us constantly at 100%, living in London, case in point, right? It's just absolute chaos. But when you do step inside, even still, your brain's still going, and actually sitting down and being self-reflective is an incredible skill. How can we, and use yourself as an example if you want to, but how can we encourage more self-reflection? Because we're constantly actually still comparing ourselves to others or not able to switch off and self-reflect.
Yeah, it's funny. You know, I was speaking to one of my friends about, she was saying I'm having a me day. And she's like, I'm my mental, you know, I'm just like, my mind is really heavy right now. I was like, oh, cool. Like, what are you doing? And I then went round just to, you know, and she was there sitting on her bed, watching TV. She had her laptop and her phone. And I was like, oh my gosh, like for someone who's feeling mentally, you know, really tired, you're stimulated by 3 types of technologies here. What is going on? And a lot of us think resting our mind is just sitting on bed with our, you know, scrolling.
Yeah.
So I love this topic of self-reflection because really I think it comes down to the quality of the questions you ask yourself. Good self-reflection has to come from the quality of your questions. So the one at the moment I do, which is a little bit intense, is at the end of every day, I ask myself, if I like died today, would I be happy with how I lived out my day? It puts such a weird perspective on life because it reminds me actually, you know what, that was important to me and I'm glad I did that. It really puts everything into that purpose and that meaning here. So I love that question. But I think if we're just going to start getting a little bit more reflective, I would say if you can just ask one question a day, whether it's like, what made me feel alive today? Or what can make me happy for the rest of the day? What do I need to feel better? about myself? Just ask yourself these questions. And it doesn't need to be to anyone else. You can journal them. You can just think about it when you're on the tube. Actually, you will start to learn how you work. And think of it like this, right? You ask other people questions, or your friends or colleagues or whatever, but why don't you ask yourself the same questions? What do you like? What's draining you? How are you feeling today? Just like how you asked me. We rarely even ask ourselves, like, yeah, but Maya, how are you actually today? What are you avoiding? So key questions like that, high quality, will help to start that self-reflection. And I'd say either in the morning, middle of the day, or in the evening.
What was your answer last night?
Yes, I've only had one day this year where it wasn't. And even if I have days where I'm just like, chilling in bed, binge watching, I'm still happy with how I lived out my day because that's what I wanted on that day. So it makes you become more intentional with your time, your energy.
So true.
Yeah, and that simple question always keeps me aligned to that.
Doom scrolling is just such a major issue in terms of it's just so your friend is such a case in point. You totally understand why, but that is a way of switching off. That is the opposite. All you're doing is stimulating, or certainly I feel like, because I think back to 40 years ago when technology didn't exist, you would see 100 people in your day.
Yeah.
I'm now seeing 100 people in a minute.
Yes.
Crazy.
Yeah, and I think it's also, yes, it's dopamine, it's addiction. It's also, as soon as we're not doing something, your thoughts come up. The worries come up, the stresses come up. And the easiest thing to do is avoid them, right? And I was, yesterday when I was sitting by the lake, I always remember this story that I'd gone on this retreat, this silent retreat, and the monk was explaining it. And he was saying that think of your mind like a very still lake. The more thoughts, the more worries, the more questions, and all of these things that you're putting in, the lake becomes a bit more rough. It's like stormy, it's windy, and it's moving a lot. It's like choppy waters. And actually, rather than just being like, okay, I don't want to think these things and let me escape them, you literally can just visualize that lake getting stiller, softer. And then from there, your mind will also respond to that and let those thoughts just be a bit more still. And I always think about it because when we are constantly seeing all this information of what other people are doing, our lake is going crazy. It's like, oh, we should be doing it. We should be going to the gym. Like, focus on your stillness of your lake and so much will change for you.
If we're going to talk about visualization, then I want to talk about the future. If you were to visualize 10 years ahead, what are you visualizing? What's my painting?
Ooh. So my big visualizations, obviously I'm trying to build the Nike of mental fitness. I don't know fully what it looks like because it's a massive goal.
And unknown, right?
Unknown. And that's okay.
That's exciting.
It is, but some people, their brains will not enjoy that. So when you are thinking about the future, you've got to ask yourself, does really big goals panic me more because I know there's a massive gap in between, or does it inspire me? But really, the thing I visualize the most for my future, of course, is my health. And it really is my character. I love building my character because it's something I can control. So it may not be 10 years in advance. I kind of go 4 or 5 years. Yeah, but if I'm really honest, and this is why I'm proud of the work I've done, is my 10-year vision is pretty similar to how I'm living out my life at the moment. A lot of it is me sitting by a lake, maybe in a warmer country, maybe with kids or whatever, but yet still on stages, doing public speaking, doing the coaching I'm doing. And so slowly I'm building my life to that. And it keeps me aligned, it keeps me inspired, which is I'm grateful for.
I've got so many more things that I haven't managed to answer, but I said this to my last guest. When they say something interesting that I'm interested in, I'm going to go talk about that and continue it. So we've got so much that I haven't asked, but that's okay. But
I'll do quick fire, I don't mind.
Well, okay. What does self-worth mean to you?
Simply, do I like myself?
For someone listening right now who's curious about visualization and never tried it, what is one small, simple thing they can do today to get started?
So ask yourself, what's one aspect of your character you want to make a little bit better, right? It might be confidence. Maybe you want to be a bit more empathetic, a better father, anything. Take 2-3 minutes, close your eyes, and just mentally rehearse what a more confident, kinder, driven version of you would look like and act. Like how they walk, how they talk, how they interact. Simply do it for 3 minutes and take that with you for the rest of the day. Now, the more you repeat that, you will start acting and thinking like that. I would start with character, always. So that as well, it goes away from this manifestation thing and you really see it as a performance tool.
If you could sit down with yourself when you were 13, what is something that you, as the business leader, the owner of that business, this driving force in visualization, what would you tell her?
I'd definitely say, like, feel it to heal it. I'd also say, and this is just a personal response for me, is learn to let go. Really learn to let go. I hold on to things.
You're telling me.
Yeah, like I really do, especially if it hurts me, I really hold on. And there's this amazing story of 2 monks. You've got a junior monk and you've got a senior monk, and they're walking by a lake and they see this woman on the side and she's hurt. So the older monk goes to the woman and helps her up and puts her in a place that's, better for her. And the junior monk is really judging him because as monks, you're not allowed to touch women. It's just part of the values. They continue on their hike, 2 hours, 3 hours pass. And the junior monk is just like, he wants to ask, he needs to say something. And he finally does. Hours later, he's like, look, you shouldn't have picked up that woman. It's against our morals. And the senior monk says, I let go of that woman hours back, and yet you are the one that's still carrying her. And I love it because we just carry weight, or, we take things personally, and that thing of acceptance and just letting go. Yeah, it's a lesson I will never, ever forget, and I will always take with me.
My final question I ask every guest, what does the word headstrong mean to you?
Becoming aware of how your mind works, how you view the world. Becoming intelligent enough to ask yourself, why is it like that? And then being agile enough to decide, I'm going to change this and take ownership of it.
I love it. Thank you so much for coming on. Visualize. Do you want to give me, when are we getting this?
Yeah, so March 27th is when it's out. And yeah, I'm just super excited. There's a lot of practical elements in it. So there's over 15 guided visualizations with music, etc. And it's really, like I said, it's the Bible. So if you want to learn, master it, learn how to think, feel, perform like the top 1%, it's your go-to. And the last thing I will say is your mind is a puppy. And if you don't train it, it's going to shit everywhere. So get the book and you'll have a good puppy on your hand.
I love it. Just before we stop, did you do an audiobook?
Yes.
How was that? Was that fun?
Physically
Stressful?
demanding. Yes. I love speaking, but oh my God, by the end of it, I was like, can someone take me out of here? And I think because there's so many visualizations, like I'm guiding them on the audiobook, they're like, I take it very seriously. But it's great because we've added music in it. So it's actually an experience for people. So if they're reading it, they can take it with them, which is exciting.
Awesome. I hope it goes swimmingly in the lake. So really good luck. I love it. So go check it out on March 27th.
Thank you.
Love it.